Nudge yourself closer to the fire, my friends. It's round 7. Let's go!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Tavern. It's time to begin round number 7 here for the Hearthstone Championship Tour's Summer Playoffs for the Americas region. I'm Frodan, joined by Brian Kibler, and we get to basically begin the beginning of the end. It's going to be a long journey for some of these players going into the dual tournament, but they first have to get there. And coming for you on stream, we have Zalae, your teammate from Omnistone, and then versus Perna from Latin America. It's going to be really cool to see, a little bit clash of North and South America here.
Yeah, this is, as you mentioned, the beginning of the end, the final round of Swiss, when we will determine which 8 players will be advancing to that dual tournament group stage double elimination knockout. Basically determine, I don't really know exactly what to call it.
A lot of adjectives, but the most important thing is that it's elimination time. We'll find out who is going to be cut from Swiss. Then from that point on, we're going to find out who is going to be from the 8 remaining cut down to the final 4. So let's take a look at some of our players. First, beginning with Perna. We did see Perna perform very well in Copa America earlier this year, being able to get top 3, and then even also doing well in the tour stop in Germany to start off the year. Sorry, apologies. He actually even was able to win Copa America the previous year as well, 2017. And Perna has been very consistent in his region, even having a little bit of international results. So he doesn't come from anywhere, and I think a lot of people won't be shocked to see him go very far once they see him play. However, I have seen him also play on broadcast, and it felt like there were moments where it was a little bit shaky. So even though he's gotten really far in tournaments, he has to keep that consistency all the way through if he wants to get past a player like Zalae.
It's true. Zalae is a very accomplished player. He was actually number 2 behind Muzzy in the last call standings for the Americas region last year. So, just missed out in that Worlds invitation by a relatively small margin.
That's right.
And he has performed very well in a number of previous years. I believe he was actually the points leader in 2015, it may have been, for the Americas region as well. So, a lot of accomplishments that Zalae has had, but he has not been able to make his way to a championship just yet.
That's right. He's gotten a lot of respect from a lot of his peers, and of course his stream has been taking off recently, but the one thing eluding him is that big individual championship on an HCT stage. He's won big on the Star Ladders stage. He's also won big with the Trinity Series last year when he was able to win with the team Love You Lots. So take a look at Zalae here as we are able to dive a little bit deeper into his profile. You can see that he's been performing very well in all kinds of tournaments, and he's also a contributor to a very well-known podcast called Omnistone. Kevin, you may know a thing or two about that.
You may too, but no, Zalae, yeah, he's been around for quite a while. He has been playing. He was actually on Team Archon back in the day with Purple and Firebat and Orange. A huge array of players.
I've heard those names before.
Yeah, absolutely. Who've had a ton of success since then. And he was one of the people who was picked up back then. Has really been an exceptionally consistent player, but as you mentioned, hasn't really had the individual success at the HCT level just yet.
Just yet could be the most important words of that sentence, as both these players looking for a top 8 spot. As you guys may have seen from the classes that were brought, Zalae chose an offbeat strategy as well. He's not bringing Warlock to this lineup, or sorry, to his tournament. How has he gotten this far, Kibler, without Warlock as his anchor?
I think a lot of his lineup looks to target decks like Warlock. He has the Tempo Mage deck, and not just Tempo Mage, but he has Tempo Mage with Vicious Fledgling. So he's really trying to punish the slower decks, things like Quest Rogue, things like the Warlock decks that may not necessarily have the removal right away. Because Vicious Fledgling is a particularly interesting card in that, obviously if it goes unchecked for a single turn, it can be absolutely devastating. A lot of the removal that these control decks play are things like Hellfire or Spellstone. And, well, that costs 4 and 4. And if you Fledgling, and it gets to connect just once, that can get out of range of those and continue to snowball that damage. And you don't need to get that much damage in with a deck like Tempo Mage to really close things out with the burn.
All right, let's take a look a little bit closer to their lineups. I believe the bans may have been put in here, and they are. Zalae is banning the Spiteful Druid, and Perna is banning the Even Paladin. It makes sense given that Even Paladin is one of the most powerful decks in the current metagame right now. Zalae pretty much banning a very consistent deck in the Spiteful Druid. So, you know, taking a look at their lineups here, this seems as if Zalae has the lineup that he wants to queue into. You know, this is the kind of lineup that he prepared for with such an aggressive amount of strategies, but he also has that weird control priest kind of thrown in there, which is, you know, supposed to be good against Warlock in paper, but recent data is also suggesting that maybe control priest is losing against the Q blocks.
It's an interesting deck, and Zalae is actually playing a little bit of an older school version. We saw a number of players, including Fibonacci, who we had on camera yesterday, who were playing the Holy Fire build of the deck. Zalae's deck has Twilight Acolyte, he has Cabal Shadow Priest. He has a much more sort of board-focused deck rather than necessarily a burn-focused deck. And I think that against the Warlock, against, say, Quest Rogue, you want to be burn-focused rather than board-focused because those decks can really take control very readily and prevent you from getting that minion-based damage in.
Absolutely. Quest Rogue, one of the most polarized matchup spreadsheet in the entire metagame. Sometimes has absurd win rates like 80, 85%, and then can lose 90% of the times to Tempo Mage. That's kind of how the statistics are so polarized, and I think Zalae really wants to capitalize that with a fairly aggressive lineup plus Control Priest as a way to kind of hedge against the Warlocks there. So really interesting set of strategy that helped him carry this far. I think most people would not expect a lineup to get this far without Warlock, and yet Zalae's doing it. So we'll tip our cap to him. At the same time, do we see anything from Perna that can maybe help offset some of the strategies that Zalae is clearly targeting?
Perna's lineup seems fairly straightforward compared to a lot that we have seen. He has the Q block, he has the Spiteful Druid, and then he has even Paladin and Quest Rogue. I think Quest Rogue may be the deck that's most sort of important for Perna in this particular matchup because those aggressive decks from Zalae can really put a lot of pressure on it. So I think that maybe the Quest Rogue versus the Priest, because again it is a more board-focused rather than burn-focused Priest, could be the sort of fulcrum that this match hinges on.
Yeah, totally agree there. And I mean, I think we're pretty much just getting ready to go in just a second here. And remember, this is round number 7. Which will have a lot of coverage, and both these players, I believe, are at 5-1. So a win here could let them winning in. Although I could be mistaken, or is it actually 5-1, or is it 4-2?
Do not have this.
Oh, it's 4-2.
You have it in front of you. Okay,
I was looking at the wrong card, which had the one loss here. So it seems like Zalae, leading into this match, played against Terrence M, who made quite the comeback there. Terrence was, I believe, 3-2, and paired up against Zalae at 4-1. And he lost to Terrence. So this could be a deciding match that helps them win and in, pending on their tiebreakers. And we'll see what ends up happening here as we go to our first match, which is Even Paladin versus the Spiteful Druid. This is a tough matchup for the Spiteful Druid. However, if Perna is not able to get like a very explosive hand, and Zalae is able to curve out very nicely, which doesn't seem to be the case, then Spiteful Druid is able to be competitive.
Yeah, the Spiteful Druid can suffer against specifically the Even Paladin versions that have become more popular nowadays that are not like the aggro versions. They're versions that contain 2 copies of Equality and Consecration. So rather than just trying to fight for the board, they can deal with your Spiteful turns very easily, and that's really what the Druid deck needs, is to be able to have a strong board that their opponent can't just immediately clear. Well, Equality Consecration, that's pretty good at clearing anything.
Yeah, and Equality Consecration is definitely on the back of his mind. Did Perna 4-keep the Acidic Swamp Ooze as well?
It looks like he may have.
Oh no, it looked like he kept everything, and then I was like, wow, keeping Ooze is very ambitious.
A second Spellbreaker draw for Zalae. This is among the worst possible 4-card openings I can actually sort of piece together in my head for Zalae. Spellbreaker, very, very poor against Even Paladin generally. It can answer Blessing of Kings, but most of the time it's just inefficient. And then 10-drop, 6-drop, no acceleration in the form of the Greedy Sprite. So gonna be a very, very slow start for Zalae here. Maybe he has a slow start too, a little bit of a yawn there. He was one of the people who was talking about, I can't believe it, to get up at 8 a.m.
Yeah, I believe Zalae last week was saying like, man, there's just, sometimes you have to wake up really early. But, that's because you live on the West Coast, Zalae. So if you move to the East Coast, you wake up at a perfectly reasonable time.
This is a very powerful hand, I was gonna say. Yeah. We were talking about how Zalae's hand was poor. Look at Perna's hand. Perna's hand has Call to Arms, Call to Arms. So while Zalae is going to be hero powering on turn 3, Perna can coin call into call or call into Blessing of Kings and just put a ton of pressure on Zalae Spiteful Druid here.
Yeah, and Zalae even has, you know, a little bit extra early game compared to normally. He's got, like, you know, Dire Moles, for example, which in his deck list, which is not in every single Spiteful Druid list. So to have this lack of an early game will be an uphill battle, to say the least, especially because of that double call that you mentioned.
I mean, Perna could possibly be thinking, okay, well, maybe I don't want to call to arms here. Maybe I want to play around mind control tech because that's a card that Zalae might have, you know, that he is you know, trying to find an opportunity to play. But no, he's going to go for the power play here, coin call to arms. And that's a pretty powerful call to arms, too. 2 copies of Ooze, putting a lot of stats on the board. Vicious Fledgling on turn 4 is not very exciting, but that Fire Plume Phoenix from Zalae can at least influence the board a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit is the emphasis here, because it feels like no matter what Zalae does, he's kind of going to be pinned. His opponent's going to be able to leverage his board, trade, either take a favorable trade or just push damage and kind of ignore it. Depends on what Perna feels like is the case here. But I feel like there's no need to really rush the Spiteful Druid. You just have to make sure to set up for the best possible turn 5s and 6 play, which is usually Fungal Mancer and the Spiteful Summoner.
Yeah, but Perna just has the second call to arms, and Zalae has the roll of the eye as 2 Knife Jugglers come out and exactly get the 1 damage on the Fire Plume Phoenix. Perna pushes 6. Maybe Zalae draws his mind control tech here, but I mean, honestly, with how bad he did draw the mind control tech here.
Yeah.
All right, best draw he could have.
How much does it?
But is this even good enough? It's the best draw in his deck, but if the best draw gets the best steal, his opponent still has 4 minions, and Zalae is at 21.
Engaging TC-130 into Dislocator.
Does end up disarming one of the jugglers and convincing it to switch sides. But, you know, the problem still persists on, Perna has a lot of board leverage. And he's coming up on really powerful tools in his arsenal, whether it's weapon removal or Blessing of Kings, and then into some of his power 6 cards like Valinir and Argent Commander. It's gonna be a really big uphill climb here for Zalae.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know if there is much climbing back here from Zalae. One of the characteristics of Spiteful Druid is it's very much a curve deck. It's very much about just doing powerful things turn after turn, and Zalae has done nothing powerful yet. The only thing that he's done that has impacted the board at all is this mind control tech, and it wasn't nearly enough. It's facing down against double call to arms, and Perna has 5 minions in play. There's no more MC techs. There's no game-saving minion that Zalae can even get off this Spiteful Summoner. He can get the best possible Spiteful Summoner result and just be dead next turn very easily.
Yeah, I mean, this is normally a board that you want to try to set up some kind of defense, but you're just without things like the Serenade Chain Gang.
Yeah,
Zalae's just going to concede. Spiteful Summoner didn't even get a chance to get played. And Perna's gonna steamroll to a victory, and that's largely off the back of how powerful his even Paladin is against the entire lineup, essentially, of Zalae outside of Control Priest.
Yeah, and we talked about how the Equality Consecration is a big power point in that matchup, but so is just the ability to curve out and threaten your opponent when they have any kind of awkward draw in the early game. Zalae had no 1-drop, he had no 3-drop, he had nothing.
Yeah, exactly, and with Zalae's kind of situation going up against Perna, like looking at the numbers a little bit more closely, both Even Paladin and Spiteful Druid have really good matchups against most of his lineup except for 1. And so he's going to struggle against 1. If he bans Spiteful Druid, then he struggles against Even Paladin. If he bans Even Paladin, he's going to struggle against Spiteful Druid. So this win was pretty much something that Zalae was already resigned to. It all comes down to whether or not he can effectively take down the Quest Rogue and the Warlock with its remaining percentages.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned at the beginning, I think the Rogue deck is going to be the most important for Perna to get through because that is very vulnerable to the Mage. It is pretty good against the Spiteful Druid. And then there's the sort of X factor of the Priest matchup, where there are the tools for the Priest to go aggro early, depending on how the Rogue's draw lines up. But again, Zalae has less burn than the Holy Fire lists, and if the matchup we saw yesterday, if Fibonacci had drawn a non-burn card that single turn, he was going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, Control Breeze versus Quest Rogue is probably one of its worst matchups in the current metagame, outside of just straight up like ways to just remove everything and gain a bunch of life like Odd Warrior. These kinds of matchups can be really tough, ones that burst you down because you give them too much time, or ones that you just can't get within the damage range. But we'll cross that bridge if we end up getting there. In the meantime, kind of have to focus on what's ahead of us, and we have Warlock versus Tempo Mage. A matchup that should go Zalae's way, but I mean, Gibbler, like we've been talking about for the past couple weeks here, Tempo Mage seems to be struggling a lot more than its performance across the board would suggest.
Yeah, Tempo Mage is a very volatile deck because in the matchups where things come together, you play your Mana Worm, you coin out a Kirin Mage into a Secret. It seems virtually unstoppable in a wide variety of matchups, but we saw some games yesterday where it was like, okay, I drew Mana Worm on turn 2. I had a Kirin Mage and no Secret. The deck is way less powerful then. You really need your Cinder Storms to be burning your opponent's face and not running into Plated Beetles and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, recent play has shown that Tempo Mage is only a 53% favorite against Cube Warlock at Legend rank over the past week. So is it actually as favored, or is it maybe close to even, depending on how the Warlock techs against aggressive strategies that they feel like it's happening in tournaments?
There's both the sort of tech decisions as well as the gameplay decisions too. The way in which a lot of Warlocks can navigate the matchup. If you're just life tapping willy-nilly and and not really respecting the burn and burst potential of the Mage deck, yeah, you're not going to do very well. But there's also, I mean, I'm curious to see how Perna approaches this, because a lot of players, especially who may not necessarily be especially experienced, will almost always hold Acidic Swamp Ooze for fear of Aluneth. I wonder if, in Perna's position, facing this Sorcerer's Apprentice, if just playing Ooze, and it looks to be what he's choosing to do, to combat the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And this is a play a lot of people who are maybe less experienced players be like, I need this for Aluneth. It's like, you also just need to stay alive. Right. Aluneth, the sort of looming threat of Aluneth is only relevant if you get to that point you're not dead already.
Yes, it's almost as if you're gonna start playing around other things like Divine Favor from turn 1. It's like, those are the backup options if option 1, which is kill you by turn 4 or 5, doesn't work.
Yeah,
Aluneth is like the backup.
And Perna's other option there was, what, Life Tap? Is that going to be valuable? That lets your opponent develop more.
Yes.
So, while Zalae had the Cinderstorm to answer and get damage in as well, I think that it was absolutely correct for Perna to deploy that Ooze there and hope to at least challenge the board and slow down Zalae's minion-based development. And there's the fledgling now.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about how those tech cards are going to influence the matchup percentages significantly. So Perna's anti-weapons, anti-aggro tech with Plated Beetle, 6 Swamp Ooze, those are going to help a lot. But Zalae also has things like this Vicious Fledgling, which is going to warrant a check from Hellfire or a Spellstone. And it looks like Zalae is going to audible just a little bit here with the Primordial Glyph first. Doesn't want to play directly into that, and it looks like he wants to either set up that counter spell or perhaps develop with the Arcanologist so that he has more cards in his hand.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of fear of running the Fledgling just into Hellfire, losing your Sorcerer's Apprentice as well, because Zalae currently doesn't have that much burn, and Counterspell is also a great setup here. It can potentially eat your opponent's Spellstone, it can eat your opponent's Hellfire, protect your minions.
You say he doesn't have much burn, but he's got 6 straight damage right now. You can put his opponent to 13.
Prior to that glyph, he did not. So.
Yeah, it's a ton of damage. And Zalae also knows that, there's no coin to hold. So things like Counterspell, if well-timed, or rather when well-timed, I'm just going to assume that the players here have a full mastery of it. It's going to be devastating for Perna to try to respond, because he would like to keep all spells in his hand and use them in some capacity.
And with no secret up, I imagine Perna will take the opportunity to use Spellstone, reduce the incoming damage a bit.
Yes.
It does take out the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Honey Berserker. What year is it?
It's current year, last time I checked, but the big problem with this current turn is the mana spend. And Zalae is just going to go off curve. I mean, If there's some way to pair 2 and 2, that'd be great, but can't really deny Vicious Fledgling play. Perna picks up the Hellfire. That is a huge acquisition.
It is, but Perna's at 11 now. And there is the possibility of a Mani Berserker into Counterspell, which can stop any Dark Pact shenanigans.
I mean, if that wasn't the case, Perna was most likely forced to Doomguard. That could have been disastrous if the Dark Pact ended up coming out in this position.
And he's gonna go for Lackey. There's no explosive runes here, which is what he's praying for with that Lackey. Yeah. Now, can he afford to cast the Dark Pact and get it countered? He does not think so. No. This means that zalae could potentially ping his own Berserker, hit for 5 damage, putting Perna to 6.
Right. And then if he plays Mana Worm Explosive Runes, let his opponent maybe take a little damage and Life Drinker for the win. That could be a setup, unless he wants the maximum board tempo, which is Life Drinker just by itself immediately.
There's always a little bit of a scary situation with Explosive Runes because your opponent can have either a Lackey or a Carnivorous Cube.
Yes, the Cube is really scary.
So now I think from Perna's perspective, he needs to resolve Dark Pact. He needs to gain 8 life this turn. So I would not be surprised to see him try and cast a Defile into the Pact and hope for a Void Lord here.
If he gets the Void Lord, then
or
he can
if he gets a Doomguard, he can attack on a minion
as well.
Right,
if he's Doomguard, he can trade and then Dark Pact anyways. So it seems like he should be okay based off that range, but is it the best option given that he has 7 mana spend right now?
He's also at 3 life, so he 100% has to be able to gain life this turn. So he has to break the counterspell by testing the Defile, and then Dark Pact here will give him. All right, it is Void Lord, so that minion-based damage is slowed down. So now it's going to be all burn for zalae.
Yes.
And his hand is pretty minion-based, unfortunately for him. The Mana Worm and the Explosive Runes. Runes can easily get absorbed by a Cube or a Doomguard. So zalae now needs to find burn, and he just does not have any in hand outside of that Life Drinker. But for his benefit, Perna has no more life gain. He's just used his Dark Pact. The rest of his hand is just minions that, yes, can potentially absorb that Explosive Rune, but zalae has a lot of life to work with, so if he just finds a Fireball in the next few turns, maybe okay.
If he does find a Fireball, then he would actually have to play Life Drinker this turn, because he needs the hero power twice over the course of 2 turns. That means he can't play Explosive Runes or Mana Worm. I
don't think Explosive Runes or Mana Worm really matter here. I think just Life Drinker Ping Face is likely to be the play that we see zalae make, because it opens up Fireball as a lethal out immediately. Mana Worm doesn't really do anything. There's a Void Lord in the way already. And Explosive Runes, there's so many ways that Perna can break the runes, potentially even for his own benefit, like with a Carnivorous Cube.
Yes. So zalae instead is going to hold on to Mana Worm just to kind of make calculations harder for the Warlock. It's another card that you have to account for ranges. I mean, not playing Mana Worm makes it feel like your opponent will read that it's not Mana Worm. Like, oh, it might be another spell that I have to count.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of players don't necessarily consider. They just will often, oh, I have this card, I have the mana to play it. There's no bad thing about playing it, so I'll play it. And it's like, well, you're at bare minimum giving your opponent information that you don't have something else. And that can be very valuable in this sort of situation.
Yes, it's a miniature bluff, if you will, just to kind of withhold. And Perna is not going to really do too much reactively because he can't really life tap. Can't really take too much of an aggressive stand outside of the Doomguard.
I was actually a little bit curious to see if Perna might. I guess the Lackey is going to convert itself into a Doomguard pretty much immediately.
Right.
But there's even the argument. Yeah, if he plays Lackey this turn, he can play Doomguard next turn just from hand.
Right.
And then just push damage. He just needs to reduce the window that zalae has to find burn. He also wants to kill zalae before he gets to 10 mana in the instance that there is Pyroblast.
Yeah.
So closing the window of opportunity that zalae has to kill him is his most important priority here.
And so setting up the second Void Lord, I believe also prevents a Primordial Glyph into, say, like a Polymorph. So he needs to set up a second wall of defense. So I actually think that Perna's line of thinking here has a lot of merit. And then on Zalae's end, can we maximize our damage? And it seems like you might have to place hope in explosive runes, but you're coming up on turn 9, so if your opponent just has straight up Void Lord, that doesn't do anything.
I mean, you almost need your opponent to make a mistake for the runes to matter at this point. So I think that Zalae is primarily in a situation where he's trying to reduce the incoming damage. Oh, I actually, this is interesting.
Oh, he wants to fill the board up.
Right, he's trying to make it so that Perna cannot increase his own clock. I really like this from Zalae. This is super heads up.
Really cool.
Because now, oh, this is actually brilliant. So what Zalae recognizes is that, okay, I just have to draw burn. By pinging face or anything like that, I don't change my chances of the burn spells that actually win the game. I need to give myself the most possible turns. And by filling the board with these Voidwalkers, he prevents Perna from trading his lackey, getting a Doomguard, playing a Doomguard from hand, doing really anything to increase that clock. This gives Zalae as much time as possible. This is a fantastic play.
At least 2 turns, assuming Perna doesn't have any burst from the hand. And Zalae pinging his opponent down to 6 actually wouldn't change much math because he's still a fireball away, and it's not like Cinderstorm's gonna go 5 to face. In most cases, I bet that the probability is in the hundreds of thousands of scenarios to be able to account for that. So if it doesn't change the math much, Zalae bought himself maybe an extra turn, which could be the difference maker if, say, all another strong.
I mean, this is potentially several extra turns because if he left the minion on the board.
Wow, life tap. And a Dark Pact!
Oh,
What a gambit from Perna, and the second Doomer comes and accelerates it by another turn. And if that wasn't the case, then Zalae would have had it because he would be able to hero power and Frostbolt over the course of 2 turns.
Yes, yeah. If there were not the Dark Pact there for Perna, Zalae would have been able to
My goodness.
close things out.
And so Zalae's outs are now restricted to pretty much Pyroblast, I think, for next turn, immediate win.
Yeah, Perna has 11 on board right now. He can potentially draw Hellfire to close things out on his own turn. Zalae with Frostbolt to face can draw Pyroblast. Any other individual burn spell is not enough because he just has minions in his hand.
The nice thing is that Zalae is alive on the board from what he sees, and Perna has to have Hellfire, in which case Zalae could set up like a secret to potentially bluff that. But I mean, right now Perna's really afraid of Pyroblast because he's seen that Zalae's just been holding cards for so long.
Oh, and he drew Gul'dan!
Oh my goodness. Blood River Gul'dan drops, and I think that's it. There's just no way for Zalae to win this game from this point on.
Yeah, and I think that Zalae piloted this very, very well with that those trades to restrict Perna's bird space, but Perna also recognized what is this creating for Zalae as far as opportunities, and he knew, despite the fact that he's playing as the burn deck, tapping doesn't fundamentally change Zalae's outs at that point.
Right.
It would, he needs to have a faster clock than he has to beat basically any burn, and he found that Dark Pact, and that dug him high enough that he was able to sort of counter the play that Zalae had made. So I think both of these players are playing very well.
Yeah, so Perna calculated that I can't kill him fast enough, and I'm giving him too many turns. The likelihood of him drawing a way to kill me is much higher than if I life tap and accelerate my clock by half a turn, because it wouldn't matter if it's his hero power. And that extra tap not only gotten Dark Pact, but the Blood River Gul'dan the next turn. If he didn't do that, and he would have maybe just drawn Dark Pact right there, then Alnith would have been drawn, then he draws Blood River Gul'dan, and then it's a brand new game at that point, because there's so much damage coming to the Mage's hand.
And there we saw the Mage deck kind of struggle a little bit in terms of, well, I found the minions and the secrets like after they mattered, basically. In the early turns, yeah, the Kirin Tor into explosive runes can be great to shut down a lot of what they're doing. In the middle turns, runes can just be a liability, and the Kirin Tor is not getting through Void Lord.
Well, Perna strikes again and is off to a 2-0 lead. Zalae will have to sweep the Quest Rogue in order to have a chance to keep himself in top 8 contention. What's going to happen? We'll find out right after this when we return to the Summer Playoffs. Perna is up 2-0 over Zalae and only has Quest Rogue remaining, and Zalae has the Tempo Mage, he's got the Spiteful Druid, and he gets the Control Priest, and it kind of goes like a traffic light. One is green, that's the Tempo Mage, one's yellow, Spiteful Druid, and then one's a big red zone for me in the Control Priest. That's gonna be a tough matchup for Zalae.
Yeah, Zalae has very much an uphill climb at this point. Perna's Quest Rogue is vulnerable, especially given the draw Zalae has this game with Determined Mana Worm to this Tempo Mage deck, but it is pretty solid against the sort of slower mid-range board-centric Spiteful Druid deck, and then can really punish the Control Priest deck, especially when he doesn't have as many game-finishing tools as some of the other players have brought in that deck this weekend.
Yes, we'll see though. I mean, Tempo Mage is, we kind of mentioned in the 80s of matchup favorite against Quest Rogue.
I thought you were saying it was like been around since the 80s, which kind of feels like
it's
true.
I mean, man, like, look at that hairdo on the Mana Worm. Of course, it's rocking the disco haircut. But taking a look at,
I think it's in Metallica.
Nice.
It's riding the lightning right there.
Yeah,
Look at
I see it. I see it. I like that. Nice. Getting ready for EDC already?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Not quite the same.
Not
music,
the same
but anyway.
genre, but the music. We have Quest Rogue with 2 Glacial Shards. That is one way that you can stop aggressive openings from the Tempo Mage, excuse me, not the Quest Mage. The only problem is if Zalae is able to stack multiple minions with high damage, and one of them, of course, is Kirin Tormage on 3 with a secret. So that's something that Perna is going to be really scared about heading into these next couple turns here.
Perna does have the Sonya, but no chargers right now, which does make it much more difficult to really use that to get his quest online. He has no preparation, which again makes it more difficult for him to get to that point.
Yeah.
He can slow down the damage from the minions a little bit with those Glacial Shards, but without ways to bounce the minions he's drawing duplicate copies of, it's again pretty difficult for him to make headway. He can stem the bleeding, but he needs to do more than that to have a chance to win the game.
Yeah, and if he gets greedy with, say, extending onto the board with a minion that he wants to trade with Sonya, it's not only just the Mage hero power, but it's the threat of Cinderstorm, it's the threat of Arcane Missiles. So it's very optimistic to try to go for a Glacial Shard setup into Sonya. Preparation might end up becoming really useful. Perna probably gonna save that because one, he ran out of time, so even if he picked up Shadow Step, he couldn't react in time to it. But also, you never know if you want to react to your opponent's secrets as well, because the preparation might be useful later on to activate the counter spell, because we have seen instances, not necessarily in HCT, but on ladder or on streams where, counter spell has hit the quest itself to stop the Caverns Below from hitting the Crystal Core.
People really done that?
Yeah, I have seen screenshots, and I also have seen that happen. I've also seen people still to this day, this may or may not have been me 2 days ago during rehearsal, burn the quest because they weren't paying attention to their hand size. It still happens once in a while.
I did hear that someone mulliganed their quest.
Yeah, some people mulligan their quest.
I heard that someone accidentally mulliganed their quest.
As Quest Rogue, which is 100% keep. I mean, people
God,
sometimes
that hand stinks, just like, reflexively full mulligan. Oh wait, no, I need that one.
Yeah, maybe they thought they mulliganed the quest the way they guaranteed get it, because that happens with almost every other card. I like that Zalae play Sorcerer's Apprentice after their Arcane Missiles, just so you have the nice mana expenditure.
He utilized all of his mana that
Yes, yes. We are tracking mana spend as a, the stat that correlates to nothing. It's always a...
Tracking alongside Blowback.
Oh, that takes us way back. Admiral's not even here to defend himself, Kibler. We're just running a train on.
Okay. The pivot pod into Novice Engineers is a little bit of progress, but he needs a lot more than a little bit of progress against 3 minions in the board, already down to 23 life on turn 3.
Yeah, this is actually like the ideal hand for Perna if he's playing against, say, Warlock.
Right.
The Novice Engineers, the Sonyas, with freeze effects if your opponent gets an early Doomguard out. That's exactly the hand that you want. Is this the kind of scenario that Perna can afford to take damage? I don't think so. It might even warrant him to play the second Glacial Shard here, or a Firefly, just to stall for damage. It's really tough scenario. Because if you don't play this on the board, you're just accepting free damage, which you can't come back from. But if you play these Glacial Shards, you're also kind of forgoing your opportunity to utilize it with Sonya's synergy as well.
Oh, Cinderstorm picked up. These minions can absorb some of the damage from the Cinderstorm.
Yeah. The Cinderstorm and Explosive Runes looks really juicy to me right now.
I'm curious if Zalae decides, in order to get a better chance of Cinderstorm doing what he wants, maybe bump into one of the Firefly or the Flame Elemental, then Cinderstorm, likely clearing the board, pushing the damage, and opening up the opportunity to Explosive Runes.
Does increase his odds a little bit that the board does end up becoming clear just from Cinderstorms alone, if he's able to trade to the Firefly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Zalae does.
Yep. Chooses Firefly as well because it's the better Shadow Step target.
That's actually the one bad result, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it's possible that the Glacial Shard lives, but very unlikely.
Well, I mean, with the with the Explosive Rune setup, it kind of makes Sonya invalidated as well. So right now, Perna is a sitting duck.
Speaking of things that are unlikely to live, Perna in this game.
Yes. He is going to get a rude 5 damage to the face with this Explosive Runes on the Glacial Shard. Last time I checked, fire beats ice.
Depends on the context, I guess.
In most cases, fire beats ice.
What if the ice melts and becomes water?
Then water beats fire.
Okay, so it's sort of this cycle.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of like Quest Rogue beats
Right, yes.
Quest Rogue.
Yeah.
Similar sort
Hearthstone
of cycle. Right now, there's the fire to the ice.
The top tournament meta is basically a fire, ice, water meta.
Okay. Captain Planet, he's our hero. Who's Captain Planet in this? I think it's Cube-Lock.
I think so.
All of the powers combined, you know?
It's true, it's not really bad at anything, huh?
Exactly.
And Heart is like Quest Druid.
No, yeah. Heart is, it's something like Quest Druid. Quest Priest, that's my Heart.
Oh, lethal.
Oh, lethal.
Yeah. Fire wins! And Perna is gonna roll over, and that is going to be a Tempo Mage steamroll. But the big question on all of our minds, Kibler, is can Zalae do this? But even the Spiteful Druid, it has a tough matchup against the Quest Rogue by itself, and then you go to Control Priest, which usually does not beat the Quest Rogue whatsoever.
I think the stats show that Spiteful Druid's a little bit of an underdog. It does have the ability to get out in the board early, get those aggressive draws. But the Control Priest, it needs to do what Fibonacci did yesterday. It needs to go 2-drop into 3-drop, attack you with this motley crew of things, draw all of my Mind Blasts, and just blow you up. And that's a much taller order.
Yeah, and so when you have the Quest Rogue, which just kind of freezes everything, very icy. And then you have like the fiery Tempo Mage. What's left here for Zalae, he doesn't, the Spiteful Druid, if it's able to curve out and get that Spiteful Summoner out and push a lot of stats, that's where it's great. But even then, we've seen Quest Rogues come back very easily from those scenarios. So I'm feeling like even though Zalae got over a very important obstacle, because obviously he's on elimination game right now, I'm still picking Perna as the heavy favorite from this position. We kind of calculated it. It was a 9-to-1 odds from that position in Game 3 that that Perna takes the series.
Yeah, I think in this instance, the Spiteful Druid, it's Druid, it's Earth, very earthy, Earth against the Ice. They kind of butt heads. They're reasonably even, but the Ice Age, I think, sort of overcomes the Earth at some point.
It's true.
And then you have the Control Priest, which I'm trying to extend this analogy far beyond where I should.
I think Heart is, we can agree, is Shaman. No one plays Shaman right now.
I suppose Shaman would actually be Captain Planet. He has all 4 elements at his disposal.
He should be, maybe in 2016. But enough of terrible elemental analogies. We go into game number 4 with Quest Rogue versus Control Priest with Northshire Cleric as an opening. And that's a start here for Zalae. I think Zalae is maybe kind of a get her done quick kind of guy. He says he doesn't want to waste any more time.
Yeah,
start with the Control Priest.
There are different philosophies, and it is true. You'll see a lot of players who decide they want to bank on, okay, I just want to get my best chance to win, maximize my time on camera. I just want to maximize my life, which is, if I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna lose, and I'll just rest before my next match.
Kibler, he's here competing for what is upwards to $1 million prize pool if he goes to the HCT World Stage. If that's not maximizing life,
my point is,
I don't know what is.
My point is, I'm not suggesting that he's not. My point is that, in terms of the time spent in the actual match,
yes,
there's no reason to not just get your worst matchup out of the way once you're in the position of, okay, I have to win with this anyway.
Right.
And speaking of worst matchups, Perna's hand is kind of a nightmare as well. He has that Sonya, he has preparation, he has multiple chargers. So that even if zalae is able to try to get this sort of anemic beatdown going with 1-5, 1-3, poke away at you, Perna has the tools and a Shadow Step picked up to really put zalae in a terrible position with the quest very quickly.
Sonya Shadow Step is one of the most powerful combos that you can do with Quest Rogue early on if you give it a lot of time. And then Sonya becomes 1 mana, and essentially the quest can get completed next turn in a hypothetical world.
Yeah, so Perna has the ability to play Sonya into either boar or deckhand, keep attacking the boar or deckhand into, say, Northshire Cleric. That will allow him to just keep adding up those ticks on his quest. And next turn he has 4 mana, 5 at the coin. He can't quite complete, but he can complete a turn after that. And that's a real difficult situation for zalae to try and overcome.
People compare Control Priest to Freeze Mage these days, but obviously one big tool that Control Priest really lacks is actual board stall. Their best board stall tool is Psychic Scream, which often comes at the cost of their own board. And in a matchup like this, you actually kind of need your minions to interact while you stall on the board. So Frost Nova can let you push damage. Psychic Scream commits whatever Twilight Drakes and other big stat minions you have on the board.
Well, speaking of big stat minions, swapping with the Cleric, powered shielding, he's got a 2/7 coming in there.
Where's that Inner Fire Divine Spirit combo when you need it, right? It's not in this deck, but that's something that even zalae was talking for a while, how much he loved that deck, and he would love it in this matchup, and specifically as an option to hit his opponent. But even then, Quest Rogue has ways to counterplay that with Glacial Shard and Vanish.
And yeah, it is starting to be Sonya time.
The good news, because obviously there's plenty of great news for Perna. He's going to be able to essentially get every piece of his quest finished. He has preparation. The news for zalae is that he's going to still have some kind of a board to at least answer Sonya, because then the real painful scenario of Sonya is when you can't do anything to it.
Right.
Choose soon.
Yes, I believe this is the 4th cast of the deckhand here. Getting a little bit of damage in. So now next turn, he can play deckhand, completing the quest for prep. Attack you with 2 5/5 chargers on turn 5.
That seems to be what is on the menu for the next turn. What can zalae do, if anything? First, I guess he could draw a card. See what ends up coming out.
He can't do that. He could even draw 2.
I mean, looks like he's valuing the 1 damage from the Acolyte here instead of drawing some card. Just kind of shows you how dire the situation is. He needs every single point of damage, even an Acolyte's on offense duty. This is kind of like the no goalie strat. You're just, everyone's going straight for the attack, Oh, gosh.
Prep quest, or brutal chargers, kill all your guys, play a Firefly.
So one thing that can exist is if Perna overextends into a board and can't finish before zalae gets a Psychic Scream, and then he's stuck with drawing 1 5/5 per turn. That's a much more reasonable board to answer. So Perna does have to be careful, but we do know that a lot of Quest Rogues have a lot of card draw mechanisms in their deck. We're talking about Elven Minstrel, or even just small draw like Zola and Mimic Pod. Valera could also come out.
And Perna choosing not to use his board to clear off the Twilight Drake here. I assume because he's just, well, all my minions can kill it anyway. I don't want to offer any potential trades to the Acolyte of Pain. This does give zalae a little bit of a window to get a little bit of damage in, but again, that is a little bit. Perna's still at 24. Zalae hasn't Shadow Vision yet. He can't have a bunch of Mind Blasts. So no particularly big threat to Perna, and that Boar plus Brewmaster is 10 points of charge coming up.
Plus, both powered shields have been used on the Northshire Cleric, so it's not like he's gonna get a really favorable trade. And seems like Zalae is going back on the counter offense. I mean, we kind of mentioned we're all in on aggroing down this quest rogue. Picks up a vicious scale hide, though.
And we've talked a lot about the scale hide impact on quest rogue over the course of the event. You know, yes, you want to try and burn me out. That's not going to happen anymore. You've gotten all this chip damage in, little bit by bit, and now with the scale hide plus Brewmaster, Perna's going up to 29. So all that work that Zalae has. He's actually not going to attack with this turn, but regardless, all that work that Zalae has done has been undone. And now it is Zalae who is basically dead next turn.
Once he gets Psychic Scream.
He did.
That's what I was talking about here.
But that just feels like it kind of delays the inevitable. You know, maybe he has the tools to set up if Perna doesn't find any other minions. He did draw a Sap. So that Sap is very weak in Perna's hand. It's great against Void Lord, but it's going to kind of rot here against Zalae, and maybe Zalae has an opportunity to kind of come back, Alex Straza, get the burn going. He does have Primordial Drake to maybe get a little damage in, maybe defend himself as well.
Yeah, but Perna is still pretty low on resources.
It's true.
The only thing is that the Primordial Drake can get sapped, so Zalae playing a Primordial Drake here is death.
Yeah. Yeah, that sap is mostly useless, but just needs the 5/5s here.
Oh, it's
and
so close.
He does have Divine Hymn, which does not put him high enough.
But he could
Put him at 14, so he could survive. But yeah, the Primordial Drake, he hopes to hide behind it, but sap in hand. We see the pump of the fist from Perna here, as he knows that is it. Zalae does not manage to overcome the rough matchup against the Quest Rogue, and it will be Perna who advances to 5-2.
Yes, so this was an important match, even if it wasn't for top 8. It was important for the tiebreaker score so that you could maximize the amount of standings and points that you get. So if Perna ends up, say, in the top 12 instead, he landed there as opposed to dropping to potentially in the 30s, where he'd have to be in limbo whether or not he gets a significant amount of points or no points at all.
Yeah, and points are very valuable, not only for qualifying for future playoffs, but you know, the various Masters standings throughout the year. I know that's something that Zalae in particular is shooting for.
That's right, considering that he was the runner-up for points in the last call in 2017, and heading into 2018 has bigger goals. And I do wonder where Zalae falls, because I believe the points, in addition to just showing up to the playoffs, extend starting at top 32. So if Zalae